"Daddy, please help her." The cry of Jake's young daughter echoed through the parking lot. Jake, Iron Mercer, a former Marine and Hells Angels biker, was shopping with his daughter when he saw 5 men dragging a woman toward a dark van. Every instinct told him to walk away. He was with his daughter. But when one of the attackers pulled out a knife, Jake made a choice. For minutes later, all 5 men were on the ground, subdued. The next morning, a Marine general knocked on his door. The woman Jake had saved was the general's daughter, and the 5 men were part of something much bigger than a random attack. If you believe one person can make a difference, stay until the end. You won't believe who that woman really was. Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel and let us know in the comments where you are watching from. Enjoy the story. Westwood Mall in Arizona is busy with families running errands. Jake is there for one reason: school supplies. Nothing more. Jake is a single father, a Marine veteran, a member of the Hells Angels. Those details don't announce themselves, but they're visible if you know what to look for. The patch on his jacket draws attention. Some people stare. Some don't. Jake notices all of it and responds to none of it. He's learned how to move through public spaces without escalating anything. Years of military training taught him situational awareness. Years after taught him restraint. He walks calm, steady, controlled. At his side is his daughter, Karen. She stays close, but not afraid. She knows how her father looks to strangers. She also knows who he is to her. Those are 2 different men, and she understands the difference instinctively. They move through the store aisle by aisle. Not rushing. Not lingering. Jake lets Karen choose her own supplies. He doesn't grab things for her. He doesn't correct her choices unless she asks. This is intentional. He wants her to learn decision-making, not dependence. Karen picks up notebooks, compares them, puts them back. Jake watches without hovering. When she looks up for reassurance, he gives a nod. That's enough. Jake doesn't talk much, but when he does, Karen listens. Not because she's afraid of him, because she trusts him. They stop near the school supplies. Karen hesitates over a choice. Jake lowers himself slightly, so he's speaking to her at eye level. His voice stays even. No lectures. No motivational speeches. He tells her that being brave doesn't mean being aggressive. It means standing your ground when it matters. He tells her kindness isn't weakness, and strength doesn't require cruelty. He's careful with his words. These aren't ideas he picked up from a book. They're principles shaped by experience. Karen asks him a question. It's simple, but it matters to her. Jake answers directly. He never lies to her. He never sugarcoats. He believes respect starts with honesty, even when the truth is uncomfortable. Around them, life continues without pause. Families pass by. Kids argue over snacks. Couples debate purchases they won't remember next week. No one recognizes Jake. No one cares who he is or where he's been. That anonymity is rare for him. For once, he isn't being watched for the wrong reasons. He isn't being measured, judged, or sized up. Here, he's just a father doing something ordinary. Karen laughs at something minor. Jake smiles before he realizes he's doing it. The tension that usually lives in his posture fades. He doesn't feel the need to scan every face. He doesn't feel the weight of his past pressing down on him. Moments like this are fragile. Jake knows that, even if Karen doesn't. He values them because they don't last. He reaches for the cart as Karen drops her notebooks inside. He gives one automatic glance down the aisle, not because he senses danger, but because habits don't turn off. He sees nothing out of place. He lets the instinct pass. Right now, there's no threat, no signal, no sense that anything is about to change. And that's why this moment matters. Because in exactly 4 minutes, this routine trip would become something the FBI would later describe as the break they had been waiting for. But none of that exists yet. Right now, Jake is still just a father. Karen is still just a kid picking out school supplies. The world around them is still moving the way it always does. Nothing feels important. Nothing feels dangerous. Nothing feels like the beginning of a turning point. And that's how it always starts. The sound cuts through everything. A scream. Sharp. Panicked. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to matter. Jake hears it before he processes it. His body reacts first. His head turns. His shoulders tighten. Training takes over without permission. Years of Marine conditioning snap into place in less than a second. Assess. Locate. Evaluate. Karen is beside him. That becomes priority 1. Jake's hand moves instinctively, pulling her closer, positioning her slightly behind him. He doesn't speak yet. He's listening, measuring distance. direction, volume. The scream comes again, louder now, fractured with fear. This isn't an argument. This isn't someone startled. This is terror. Jake scans the parking lot. His eyes don't dart. They lock and move with purpose. He spots them almost immediately. 5 men. Athletic builds. Moving fast, but coordinated. Too coordinated. One of them has a knife out, not waving it wildly, but holding it low, controlled, meant to be seen only by the person it's meant for. A woman is between them. They're not dragging her. They're steering her. Hurting. One hand gripping her arm, another blocking her escape path. She's resisting just enough to make the scream rip out of her, but not enough to break free. There's a van nearby. Dark. Engine off. Side door already open. Jake doesn't need more information. He knows exactly what this is. Karen sees it too. Her voice cuts through his focus. Not screaming. Not panicked. Just shocked. Daddy, someone's hurting that lady. The words land hard. Jake doesn't answer right away. His mind is moving faster than language. Distance. Numbers. Weapons. Exit routes. Lines of fire. Civilian presence. Risk. And then the other calculation. The one that doesn't come from training. His daughter is here. Every instinct he has is screaming at him to do one thing. Protect Karen. Remove her from the situation. Get her somewhere safe. Do not engage. Do not escalate. Do not gamble with her life. That instinct is absolute. But there's another voice underneath it. Quieter, but relentless. Someone is about to be taken. Jake watches the knife flash as the man holding it shifts his grip. It's not for show. It's not sloppy. It's a tool. A warning. A promise. The woman tries to pull away. One of the men shoves her harder than necessary. Her scream breaks into sobbing. She's running out of air. Running out of options. Jake feels the familiar pressure in his chest. The one he hasn't felt in years. The moment before action. The moment when everything narrows. He looks down at Karen. Her eyes are wide, locked on the scene. She's not crying. She's not frozen. She's looking at him, waiting, trusting him to decide what happens next. That's the conflict. If he steps in, he risks everything. 5 men. A knife. Unknowns. If he stays back, he keeps Karen safe, but he walks away knowing exactly what happens when vans like that close their doors. Jake's jaw tightens. His breathing stays steady. He doesn't let Karen see the calculation happening behind his eyes. He tells her to stay close. His voice is calm, controlled, the same tone he used earlier when talking about bravery and kindness. He positions himself so his body blocks her view as much as possible, without turning his back on the threat. The men are almost at the van now. Time compresses. Seconds stretch. Jake knows this moment will follow him no matter what he does. If he intervenes and fails. If he doesn't intervene at all. There is no clean outcome here. The scream cuts off suddenly, choked short as the woman is forced closer to the open door. That's when Jake makes his decision. What Jake saw in that moment would haunt him, but what he didn't see would nearly get him killed. Karen's voice cuts through everything. Daddy, please help her. There's no panic in her tone. No screaming. Just urgency. Just belief. She's looking at him like the answer is obvious, like the world still works the way she thinks it should. That look hits harder than the scream did. Jake doesn't hesitate outwardly. Inside, everything collides at once. Fear. Responsibility. Instinct. Memory. The unbreakable rule he's lived by since the day Karen was born. Nothing comes before her safety. He moves fast. He guides Karen behind a nearby car, low and tight to the metal. His body shields her until the last possible second. He presses the phone into her hand, already unlocked, already dialing. He tells her exactly what to do. Where to stay, how to stay hidden, how to stay low. His voice doesn't shake. He doesn't rush his words. Calm is contagious, and he needs her calm. He tells her to stay right there. Not to move. Not to look. Not to come out no matter what she hears. I'll be right back, sweetheart, he says. Stay here and stay low. He makes it a promise, even though he knows better than to make promises in moments like this. He waits until she nods. Until she understands. Until she believes him. Then he turns. Jake steps away from the car with nothing in his hands. No weapon. No backup. Just muscle memory and experience earned the hard way. Every step toward the van is deliberate. He doesn't charge. He doesn't shout. He doesn't posture. He walks like someone who has done this before and survived it. The men notice him almost immediately. They see the patch, the colors, the confidence that doesn't belong to a civilian just passing through. One of them laughs. Another nudges the man with the knife, amused, like this is about to be entertainment. The knife comes up higher now. Still controlled. Still not flashy. A threat meant to be unmistakable. One of them speaks. Walk away, old man, or you're next. The words are casual, almost bored, like they've said this before, like it usually works. Jake stops a few feet away, far enough to avoid a sudden rush, close enough to be heard without raising his voice. He looks at the woman. Her face is streaked with tears. She's shaking. She's barely standing. She's looking at him like he might be the last thing between her and a door that closes forever. Jake looks back at the men. Let her go, he says. No insults. No threats. Just clarity. Last chance. The laughter fades. This isn't fun anymore. They hear something in his voice they didn't expect. Not bravado. Not fear. Certainty. The man with the knife steps forward half a pace. Testing. Measuring. Jake doesn't move. His breathing is slow. His hands are open. His weight is balanced. He's already running through outcomes. If one rushes. If two flank. If the knife comes fast. If it comes low. He knows he's outnumbered. He knows this could end badly. He also knows walking away would end worse. The parking lot feels smaller now. Tighter. Like the air itself is holding its breath. This is where lines get drawn. This is where choices stop being theoretical. If you believe real men stand up to predators, comment, protect the innocent, because this is where it gets intense. The first man shifts his stance. The second closes the van door halfway, just enough to remind Jake what's at stake. No one else is stepping in. No sirens yet. No help coming. What happens next will be decided by seconds, by reflex, by who commits first and who hesitates. What happened next lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Police body camera footage would later show something law enforcement trainers still use in academies today. But first, you need to understand who Jake Mercer really was. Before anything moves forward, it helps to understand who Jake Mercer is and why walking away was never really an option. Jake didn't grow up looking for trouble. He grew up learning discipline, structure, consequence. The Marine Corps gave him all three. 2 tours shaped him in ways that don't fade when the uniform comes off. Combat taught him how quickly order collapses, how fast decisions turn permanent, and how responsibility doesn't disappear just because the rules do. He learned to function under pressure when fear was constant and mistakes were fatal. He learned how to read people without words, how to spot coordination, hesitation, intent. Those lessons never left him. They settled into muscle memory, into instinct. When his service ended, the structure vanished overnight. The mission disappeared. The brotherhood scattered. Like a lot of veterans, Jake struggled with the silence that followed. Civilian life felt unanchored. Purpose felt diluted. The Hells Angels filled that gap. Not the chaos outsiders imagine, but the structure, the loyalty, the unspoken rules. A brotherhood that didn't require explanations. Men who understood violence not as indulgence, but as something controlled, reserved, last resort. Jake found something familiar there. A place where watching each other's backs wasn't symbolic, it was expected. More importantly, he found a code that aligned with his own. Protect your own. Protect the vulnerable. Stand your ground. Then his life fractured again. 3 years ago, his wife died. Sudden. Final. No time to prepare. No clean goodbye. One day he was a husband. The next, he was a single father trying to hold together a world that didn't slow down for grief. Raising Karen alone changed everything. She became his center of gravity, his reason to come home, his reason to stay straight. Every decision filtered through one question. Does this keep her safe? He adjusted his life around that answer. Less risk, more restraint, fewer nights out, more mornings making sure she was ready for school. He taught her strength, but also empathy. Taught her to stand tall without becoming hard. Taught her the difference between aggression and courage. And underneath all of it was the rule he lived by, the one that guided him long before he could put it into words. Protect those who can't protect themselves. That code didn't come from the Marines. It didn't come from the club. It came from watching what happens when no one steps in. From seeing how fast predators move when they think no one is watching. Back in the parking lot, all of that converges. The training, the loss, the promises made quietly over years of ordinary moments. The instinct to shield Karen from harm, battling the knowledge of what happens when people look away. Facing 5 armed men, Jake isn't thinking about heroics. He isn't thinking about headlines. He's thinking about outcomes. He's thinking about whether these men hesitate, whether they're disciplined, whether they're professionals or opportunists. And there's something about them that doesn't sit right. It's subtle, not what they're doing, but how. The spacing, the confidence, the lack of panic. This isn't random. This isn't sloppy. Jake's training recognizes it immediately, even if he can't name it yet. These men aren't improvising. They're operating. That realization tightens everything, because it means this situation is bigger than it looks, more organized, more dangerous, and far less forgiving of mistakes. Jake doesn't know it yet, but that detail, the thing his instincts flagged but couldn't fully explain, would only make sense later, after the general arrived. The first man moves without warning. The knife comes forward in a short, direct lunge, fast and confident. Not reckless, trained enough to be dangerous. Jake reacts before the blade reaches full extension. He steps inside the attack instead of away from it. One hand traps the wrist. The other strikes the elbow at the exact moment the momentum peaks. Bone alignment breaks. Grip fails. The knife hits the pavement before anyone registers what just happened. 2 moves. No flourish. No wasted motion. The attacker stumbles back, shocked, clutching an arm that no longer works the way it should. The second man rushes immediately, swinging wide. Jake pivots, using the open car door beside him. Metal slams into ribs. Air leaves the attacker's lungs in a sharp burst as he folds, collapsing against the vehicle. The third comes from the side. Faster. Smarter. Jake grabs a shopping cart without looking, shoves it hard into the man's legs, then drives forward. The cart topples. The man goes down with it. Jake follows through, pinning him long enough to remove him from the equation. Everything is happening fast now. The woman is still there. Frozen. She hasn't run. She can't. Her body hasn't caught up to the fact that the balance of power has shifted. She's shaking, eyes wide, breath shallow, locked in place like prey that doesn't yet believe the grip has loosened. Jake notices, files it away. He doesn't have time to help her yet. The fourth attacker circles wide. Too wide. His eyes flick toward the cars, toward Karen. It's a mistake. He moves fast, reaching between vehicles, aiming for leverage, for a hostage, for insurance. Jake sees it instantly. Everything inside him snaps tight. The controlled restraint vanishes. What replaces it is cold, absolute fury. Jake closes the distance in seconds. The man barely has time to turn before Jake slams into him, driving him into the pavement. The sound is solid, final. The attacker doesn't get back up. That was the line. The fifth man understands it too. He brakes, turns, runs. Jake doesn't chase blindly. He angles, cuts him off, uses the environment again. A quick tackle, weight placement, control. The man struggles briefly, then stops when he realizes resistance isn't changing the outcome. It's over. All 5 men are down, breathing, alive, subdued. Jake stands over them, chest rising and falling, scanning constantly. He keeps his body positioned between them and Karen's hiding spot. He doesn't loosen his grip. Not yet. Sirens begin to cut through the air in the distance. Only then does Jake look toward Karen. She's exactly where he left her. Behind a car. Low. Hidden. Arms wrapped around herself. Eyes closed. Lips moving silently. She never ran. Never stood up. Never broke cover. She stayed safe. Jake exhales for the first time since it started. Police arrive fast. Weapons drawn. Command shouted. Jake complies immediately. Hands visible. Calm. Controlled. He steps back as officers move in, securing the attackers one by one. As cuffs go on, something doesn't feel right. Jake looks at the woman. She isn't relieved. She isn't crying with gratitude. She isn't running towards safety. She's terrified. Her eyes are locked on Jake. Not in fear of what he did, but in recognition. Like she's seeing something she didn't expect. Like she knows something he doesn't. She doesn't thank him. She doesn't speak. She just keeps staring. And that's when Jake realizes this isn't over. The police take control of the scene quickly. Jake doesn't resist. He doesn't argue. He doesn't explain more than necessary. He keeps his hands visible and follows every instruction exactly as given. Years of experience tell him this moment matters just as much as the fight did. Karen breaks from her hiding place the second she's allowed to move. She runs to him, shaken, overwhelmed, her composure finally cracking. Jake drops to one knee and holds her tight, one arm wrapped around her shoulders, the other steadying her breathing. He doesn't tell her everything is fine. He tells her she's safe. That's what matters. Around them, the parking lot buzzes with delayed reaction. Voices overlap. Phones are out. Several shoppers admit they recorded parts of what happened. Different angles. Different moments. Enough to piece together the full story. Witnesses confirm what police already suspect. The woman was being forced into the van. The knife was real. The men initiated the violence. Jake stepped in after moving Karen to safety. No one contradicts that sequence. Officers nod. Some look impressed. Others look unsettled. The woman gives her statement next. She answers questions clearly. Her words are precise, almost rehearsed. She describes the men, the van, the knife. She confirms Jake intervened and stopped them, but she never looks at him. Not once. Her gaze stays fixed on the ground or on the officer taking notes. Even when Jake is mentioned by name, she avoids eye contact. Her hands tremble slightly as she speaks, not with shock, but with something closer to dread. Jake notices. He doesn't understand it, but he files it away. A detective approaches him after the scene stabilizes. Middle-aged, calm, observant. The kind of officer who listens more than he talks. He thanks Jake for cooperating. Then he asks a question that doesn't fit. Mr. Mercer, he says, have you noticed anyone following you lately? Jake blinks. Following him. The question doesn't make sense. This wasn't personal. This was a crime of opportunity. Wrong place, wrong time. Jake tells him no. Nothing unusual. No threats. No warnings. The detective nods, but doesn't seem satisfied. Any strange calls? He asks. Anyone asking questions about you or your family? That lands differently. Jake shakes his head again. His tone tightens. This is starting to feel off. The detective studies him for a moment, then lets it go. Says it's probably nothing. Says they're just being thorough. Jake doesn't press. He's tired. Adrenaline is fading. The weight of what almost happened is finally settling in. Eventually, they're cleared to leave. At home, the quiet feels heavy. Jake locks the door. Checks it twice. He sits with Karen on the couch longer than usual, holding her while her breathing slows. She doesn't talk much. He doesn't force it. Later, he tucks her into bed, pulls the blanket up, stays longer than he normally would, watches her until her eyes close. Only then does he allow himself to sit alone. The house is still. His hands shake slightly now that there's nothing left to do. He replays the moment in his head, over and over. The knife. The movement toward Karen. The look on the woman's face. That look bothers him the most. This was supposed to be over. A bad situation stopped before it became worse. A lesson learned. A story that ends with relief. But the detective's questions echo in his head. Following you lately. Strange calls. Your family. If you've ever had a moment where you knew something wasn't quite right, hit subscribe, because Jake's instincts were about to save his life. Jake finally lies down, but sleep doesn't come easily. Something about today doesn't fit. An instinct tells him that whatever he stepped into didn't end in that parking lot. The knock comes early. Jake is awake before it happens, but barely functioning. He hasn't slept more than fragments. Karen has already left for school. The house feels hollow without her. When the knock lands, it's firm. Measured. Not rushed. Not casual. Jake opens the door and immediately straightens. The man standing there doesn't introduce himself with posture alone, but he could. Dress uniform. Perfectly pressed. Stars on his shoulders. The kind of presence that doesn't need volume to command attention. The man speaks first. Mr. Mercer. Jake nods. I'm General Richard Hayes. Jake blinks once. That name means nothing yet. Then the general says the sentence that rearranges everything. The woman you saved last night is my daughter. Jake exhales slowly, like he's trying to clear fog from his head. Your daughter? The general confirms it without emotion. No pride. No relief. Just fact. Her name is Laura Hayes. Captain. Marine Intelligence. Jake feels the shift immediately. The pieces that didn't fit start moving into alignment. The general continues. Calm. Precise. He explains that Laura wasn't shopping. She wasn't in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was working. Undercover. Embedded in an ongoing human trafficking investigation. The men Jake fought weren't opportunists. They were assets. Part of a network the military and federal agencies have been tracking for 2 years. Logistics. Transport. Enforcement. The kind of organization that doesn't act randomly and doesn't forgive disruption. Jake listens without interrupting. His jaw tightens. His hands curl slightly at his sides. The general tells him Laura's cover was already compromised. Last night was meant to test something. to see who would intervene, who would watch, who would record, who would act. Jake saved her before the operation could finish. The general doesn't say it like an accusation, just reality. Then comes the part Jake was already bracing for. They know who you are now, the general says. And they know about Karen. That lands hard. The detective's questions from the night before echo back with sudden clarity. Following you. Calls. Family. This wasn't over. It never was. The general explains that Jake's background made him visible the moment he stepped in. Marine training. Club affiliation. The speed and efficiency of the fight. All of it flagged him as someone experienced. Someone dangerous. Someone who doesn't act by accident. Jake asks the only question that matters. Is she safe? The general nods. Laura is protected, moved, surrounded. But that protection doesn't extend automatically to Jake or Karen. Then the general says something that shifts the ground beneath Jake's feet. But what you need to understand, Mr. Mercer, is that my daughter wasn't targeted by accident. Jake looks up sharply. She was bait. The general continues. They wanted her to lead them to witnesses, to sympathizers, to anyone who couldn't walk away. Jake feels a cold weight settle in his chest. By saving her, the general says, you became their next problem to eliminate. The room feels smaller. The general doesn't dramatize it. He doesn't soften it. He tells Jake exactly what he's dealing with. This network retaliates. Quietly. Strategically. They don't rush. They wait. And now they have a name. A face. A daughter. The general pauses, letting it sink in. What I'm here to ask you, he says, will put you back in danger. And it may put Karen in more danger than she's already in. He looks Jake directly in the eyes. But if you say no, I will understand. Jake doesn't answer right away, because whatever choice he makes next will change everything. The general doesn't waste time. He tells Jake exactly why he's here. There's a federal task force already in motion. Multi-agency. Intelligence, law enforcement, military coordination. They're close, but not close enough. They need insight that doesn't come from files or wiretaps. They need someone who understands how men like this move, how they communicate, how they hide in plain sight. He wants Jake to help identify the network from the inside. Jake shakes his head almost immediately. I'm done fighting, he says. I have a daughter to protect. It's not defiance. It's finality. The general nods slowly, like he expected that answer, like he respects it. Then he tells Jake the truth he didn't want to hear. They already have your license plate, he says. Your address. Your routines. Jake stiffens. They had it before the fight, the general adds. He reaches into a folder and places it on the table. Inside are photographs. Clear. Recent. Time-stamped. Jake's house. The street from 2 angles. Karen's school entrance. A shot of Jake's car parked outside his home. All taken before last night. Jake doesn't touch the photos. He doesn't need to. He already understands what they mean. Walking away was never an option. The general lets the silence do the work. He explains that the network assumed Jake would either intervene or watch. Either outcome would reveal something. By stepping in, Jake confirmed himself as a variable they couldn't control. That made him a liability. Liabilities get removed. Jake's jaw tightens. His thoughts race, but his voice stays level. So what are you offering? The general doesn't frame it as a favor. Protection for Karen. Immediate. Comprehensive. Safe housing. Controlled movement. Eyes where they need to be. In exchange, Jake helps. Quietly. Selectively. He doesn't go undercover. He doesn't kick doors. He uses his access, his reputation, his instincts to identify pressure points the task force can't reach on its own. Jake stares at the table. He thinks about Karen leaving for school that morning. About the photos taken without his knowledge. About how close this already came to something irreversible. He looks up. My daughter stays safe, he says. Or I walk. I don't care what you're chasing. There's no thread in his tone. No negotiation tactic. Just a boundary. The general meets his gaze without blinking. That's why I'm asking you, he says. You're a father first. Just like me. It's the first time emotion cracks through his discipline. Just slightly. Enough to be real. 2 men. Same uniform once. Same fear now. They sit there, measuring each other. Not as ranks. Not as authority. As men who understand what's at stake. The general agrees to Jake's condition. Not lightly. Not casually. He outlines contingencies. Safeguards. Lines that won't be crossed. Jake listens. Questions specifics. Pushes back where it matters. This isn't blind trust. This is controlled alignment. When it's done, Jake knows the truth. He's already in this. The only choice left is how deep. As the general stands to leave, he pauses at the door. "There's one more thing," he says. Jake looks up. What Jake didn't know, the general continues, was that your daughter had already done something this morning that would change everything. The words hang in the air long after the door closes. The call comes from the school, not law enforcement. Jake answers, expecting routine. Attendance. Paperwork. Instead, the voice on the other end is careful. They tell him Karen drew something in class. The counselor is concerned. They ask him to come in. Jake feels it immediately, that tightening in his chest. He doesn't ask for details. He just says he's on his way. Karen is waiting when he arrives, sitting quietly, a piece of paper folded neatly in front of her. She looks up when she sees him and tries to smile. The counselor explains that Karen chose to draw something from memory. Something recent, something intense. They didn't prompt her. She just started drawing. They slide the paper across the desk. Jake unfolds it slowly. It's the parking lot, the cars, the van, the space between them, the figures positioned exactly where they were, the knife, the movement, the moment frozen in lines and color. Jake's throat tightens. She captured details he remembers clearly. Where he stood, where the men moved, where she hid. Then he sees something he doesn't recognize. Off to the side of the page is a car. Inside it, a man. Not interacting, not intervening, just watching. His face is drawn carefully, not exaggerated, not symbolic, deliberate. Jake looks up at Karen. She meets his eyes. That man was there, she says quietly. He didn't help. He just watched. Jake feels a chill move through him. He doesn't remember seeing a sixth person. He remembers chaos, motion, threats. He doesn't remember someone sitting back, observing. But Karen isn't guessing. She's certain. Jake thanks the counselor and leaves with her immediately. Within an hour, the drawing is in federal hands. Analysts don't dismiss it. They don't downplay it. They scan it, isolate the face, enhance what they can, compare it against databases. The result comes back faster than anyone expects. It's a match. A known enforcer connected to the trafficking ring. Wanted in 3 states. Rarely photographed. Almost never caught on camera. Someone who doesn't get close unless it matters. The implication lands hard. This wasn't just an operation. It was supervised. Karen noticed what trained surveillance missed. Jake feels 2 things collide inside him. Pride and fear. Pride because his daughter stayed calm, observant, present. She didn't freeze her mind, even when her body stayed still. She saw something important and remembered it. Fear because that means she was closer to the truth than anyone realized. That drawing becomes a turning point. A new lead. A name. A face. A thread the task force can finally pull. And it came from Karen. Jake holds her that night longer than usual. Doesn't say much. Just stays there, grounding himself in the reality that she's safe, that she's here. But he knows something has shifted. She's no longer just adjacent to this. Her awareness changed the game. If this just gave you chills, comment heroes come in all sizes, because Karen's courage is about to save lives. Jake looks at the drawing one more time before it's taken away. Not as evidence, as proof, and as a reminder of what he's fighting to protect. The move happens quietly. No sirens, no uniforms, no goodbyes in the driveway. Karen is taken to a secure location with Jake's brother, far from routines, far from patterns anyone could predict. The place is safe, controlled, watched. Jake walks through it once, checks doors, checks windows, memorizes exits. He doesn't let himself linger. Every extra second makes leaving harder. Karen understands more than he wishes she did. She doesn't argue. She doesn't cry. She hugs him tight and holds on longer than usual. Then she lets go. Jake turns himself over fully to the operation. The briefing is thorough, uncomfortable, heavy. 18 missing women. Not rumors. Not cold cases. Confirmed disappearances. Patterns mapped across states. Transit routes tied to highways near military bases. Logistics that point to organization, not chaos. Jake studies the photos. The timelines. The names. This isn't random violence. It's infrastructure. The task force explains where Jake fits. Not on the front lines. Not in raids. In the spaces between. The supply chain. Transportation. Storage. The places where people talk when they think they're among their own. Jake's biker connections give him access federal agents don't have. Credibility that can't be faked. He knows the risks immediately. If anyone discovers he's working with the government, There's no extraction window. No negotiation. He's dead. And so is Karen. That reality is never softened. Not once. His first mission is already set. Tomorrow night. A warehouse meeting. Low level on the surface, critical underneath. A test. An introduction. A weigh-in. Jake listens, asks precise questions, absorbs everything. This isn't combat. There are no clear enemies. No uniforms. No rules of engagement. This is patience. This is restraint. This is wearing a mask until it becomes second nature. He prepares alone. Checks his appearance. Adjusts the details that signal belonging. Nothing rushed. Nothing sloppy. Every choice deliberate. Before he leaves, he makes the call he's been holding off on. Karen answers immediately. He keeps his voice steady. Familiar. He doesn't explain the danger. He doesn't lie, but he doesn't burden her with what she can't carry. Daddy has to go help some people, he tells her. Just like we helped that lady. There's a pause on the line. Then Karen speaks. Be brave, Daddy, she says. Like you taught me. The words hit deeper than any briefing ever could. Jake closes his eyes for a moment. Grounds himself. Commits. When the call ends, there's no more delay. He steps into a life that requires him to disappear in plain sight. For the next 4 months, Jake Mercer lives 2 lives. By day, he's a single father managing custody routines and school logistics from a distance. By night, he becomes something else entirely. And what he uncovers will shake him to his core. Jake enters the network quietly. No sudden moves. No urgency. He lets time do the work. At the first meetings, he talks less than everyone else. He listens. He asks the kind of questions that don't sound like questions at all. Where things are moving. Who's reliable? Who's late? Who's making money and who's complaining about not making enough? His biker credibility carries him where credentials never could. No one challenges his presence. No one asks why he's there. They assume what men like them always assume, that he's looking for opportunity. Side money. Influence. Leverage. Jake never pushes. He lets them come to him. Slowly, patterns emerge. Warehouses that don't match the paperwork. Truck routes that avoid way stations for no legitimate reason. Coded language that sounds casual until you hear it enough times to recognize the rhythm. He memorizes everything. Dates. Names. Locations. Habits. Trust builds the way it always does in criminal circles, through shared silence and selective honesty. They start letting him see more. There are close calls. Once, someone asks about his Marine service in too much detail. Jake answers without hesitation, just enough truth to anchor the lie. Another time, a man watches him too closely while he's inspecting a shipment. Jake feels it, adjusts, plays disinterest, walks away before curiosity turns into suspicion. Each time, he survives by inches. Intelligence flows back to the task force in fragments. Addresses, floor plans, schedules, holding areas disguised as storage, safe houses that aren't safe for anyone inside them. Jake sees evidence every day. Clothing stacked where it shouldn't be. Medication without prescriptions. Food portions that don't match head counts. Marks on walls that aren't accidental. He can't act. That's the hardest part. Every instinct tells him to intervene, to pull someone out, to make it stop. But he knows the cost. One mistake exposes him. Exposes Karen. Collapses months of work and leaves dozens more trapped. The personal cost accumulates quietly. He misses school events he promised he'd attend. He lies to his brother about where he's been. He carries conversations with Karen that are warm and normal while his mind is cataloging horrors. At night, he replays faces he isn't allowed to save yet. By day 87, the pressure feels physical. That's when it happens. In the basement of a warehouse, Jake sees her. She's thinner than the photo. Paler. But it's unmistakable. She's from his hometown. He remembers the candlelight vigils. The flyers taped to storefront windows. The way her family kept showing up even when hope started to thin. She looks up. Their eyes lock. In that instant, everything threatens to unravel. She recognizes him. Not personally, but as someone real. Someone not part of this machine. Her eyes beg without words. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just desperate certainty that he could help. Jake feels his pulse spike. His breath tightens. Every fiber of him screams to move. He doesn't. He can't. He breaks eye contact slowly, deliberately, like nothing happened. Like he didn't just see the reason this matters standing 10 feet away. That moment nearly ends everything. But it also hardens his resolve. Because now this isn't abstract. It's personal. And it's almost time. Jake makes the call from his truck, hands locked tight around the steering wheel. He doesn't ease into it. He doesn't soften his words. He tells General Hayes he saw one of the missing women. Alive. Held underground. Close enough to touch. Close enough to pull out if the order came down. I can get her, Jake says. Tonight if I have to. There's silence on the other end of the line. Not hesitation. Calculation. Then the general answers. If we move now, he says, we save one. If we wait, we save all 18. Jake closes his eyes. The words land exactly as intended. Clear. Unforgiving. He argues anyway. Not loudly. Not emotionally. He lays out the risks he's willing to take. His life. His cover. Whatever it costs him personally. He doesn't mention Karen. He doesn't have to. The general already knows that. Leverage exists. The response doesn't change. We're too close, the general says. We pull the thread now, the whole thing unravels. They scatter. We lose the network. We lose the others. Jake feels something fracture inside him. This is the part no one trains you for. Not in the Marines. Not in the club. Not anywhere. Choosing who lives today and who has to wait. That night, Jake can't sleep. He turns on the television just to fill the silence. And that's when he sees her. The woman's mother. She's standing in front of cameras, holding a photo with both hands. Her voice trembles, but she doesn't break. She's pleading. Not for sympathy. For information. For someone, anyone, to help bring her daughter home. Jake recognizes the photo instantly. He turns the volume down, but he doesn't look away. Every word feels aimed directly at him. He knows where her daughter is. He knows she's alive. And he knows he's choosing not to save her yet. Jake sits there long after the segment ends, staring at the frozen image on the screen. Then he stands. He walks over. He puts his hand against the glass, just briefly, just enough to steady himself. I promise, he says quietly. Not to the screen. To the woman in the photo. I'm coming back for you. The next morning, his focus sharpens. There's no more drift. No more emotional bargaining. He accepts the timeline. 2 weeks. That's it. This ends in 2 weeks. He pushes harder. But not recklessly. He tightens conversations. Asks questions that sound natural now that trust is established. Confirms routes. Verifies headcounts. Identifies secondary locations he hadn't been cleared to know before. He documents everything. Every name. Every door. Every schedule. The cost is visible. Dark circles under his eyes. Shorter patience. Less small talk with Karen on the phone. He hates that part the most. But he doesn't break. Because if he breaks, people die. The weight never gets lighter. He just learns how to carry it without letting it show. If you believe in justice even when it costs you sleep, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will restore your faith in the system. Jake doesn't know how this will end. He only knows how it has to. All 18 come home. No exceptions. The message comes through exactly as expected. A shipment. Bigger than usual. Leadership present. No intermediaries. No buffers. Everyone who matters in one place. This is the moment the task force has been building toward. Jake is wired when he arrives. Nothing visible. Nothing that changes how he moves. The FBI is listening in real time. SWAT teams are staged close enough to respond, far enough to stay invisible. Every contingency has been rehearsed. Every exit mapped. Still, none of that matters if Jake slips. Inside, the atmosphere is different. He feels it immediately. Less noise. Fewer jokes. More eyes watching. This isn't a routine transaction. This is consolidation. Power checking itself. The leaders arrive one by one. Calm. Confident. Untouched by the consequences of what they've built. Men who don't raise their voices because they don't need to. Jake stays where he belongs. Useful, but not important. Present, but not central. He listens. He confirms details he already knows. He lets others talk themselves into comfort. The shipment is discussed in code. Locations implied, not stated. Names replaced with numbers. To anyone else, it would sound meaningless. To the people listening through Jake, it's everything. Then the tone shifts. One of the leaders turns to Jake. Looks at him longer than necessary. You've been around long enough, he says. Time to prove loyalty. The room stills. This is the moment that ends careers. Or lives. The leader gestures toward a task. Something small on the surface. Something criminal enough to cross a line. Something that can't be undone. Jake feels the wire against his skin. He knows every breath is being heard. If he refuses outright, it's over. If he goes too far, it's over. He chooses the narrow path between. He complies just enough. Moves without hesitation. Does what's required, but nothing more. Keeps his face neutral. His body language relaxed. Like this is routine. Like it means nothing. The leader watches him closely. Then nods. The tension eases slightly. Just enough. Jake takes a breath. He speaks casually. Drops the phrase they agreed on weeks ago. The words sound meaningless to anyone else. He adjusts his jacket as he finishes the sentence. That's the signal. For half a second, nothing happens. Then everything does. Doors breach simultaneously. Precision. Violence without chaos. Command shouted. Flashing movement. 17 arrests in 8 minutes. Some try to run. They don't get far. Jake moves immediately, not toward the exits, but toward the holding areas. He positions himself between the victims and the confusion. He yells instructions. Keeps people calm. Blocks paths. He doesn't let anyone disappear into the noise. The leaders go down hard. Shock replaces arrogance. They never saw it coming. Law enforcement floods the space. Cuffs click. Weapons are secured. Voices overlap, but control never breaks. Jake stays focused until the last person is accounted for. Only then does he let himself slow down. This is what 4 months leads to. And it isn't over yet. The results are immediate. 18 women are pulled from holding areas and secured locations across the network. Some walk out under their own power. Others need support. All of them receive medical care first. Trauma counselors are brought in before questions are ever asked. No one rushes them. No one pushes for statements. The priority is survival. Jake watches from a distance as the operation closes. He doesn't insert himself. He doesn't need recognition. He just needs to see that it's real, that they're out. Then he looks for one face. The woman from his hometown. He finds her sitting on a bench, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. When she looks up and sees him, recognition flashes across her face again. This time, there's relief with it. Jake kneels in front of her and speaks softly. He tells her she's going home. He tells her her mother never stopped looking. Her hands shake as she covers her mouth. She nods, unable to speak. Jake makes the call himself. Her mother answers on the second ring. He doesn't dramatize it. He doesn't tease hope. He says the words clearly, so there's no room for misunderstanding. She's alive. She's safe. I'm with her now. The sound on the other end of the line breaks something open. Gratitude. Shock. Years of fear releasing all at once. When her mother arrives later, she doesn't hesitate. She collapses into Jake, hugging him hard, thanking him through tears. Jake stands there and lets it happen. He doesn't pull away. He doesn't speak. This isn't his moment to manage. It belongs to them. Later that day, Jake picks Karen up. He doesn't explain everything. He doesn't need to. He just holds her. For several minutes straight. Longer than he ever has. He breathes her in like proof that he made it back. Karen doesn't ask questions. She just wraps her arms around him and stays there. The story breaks nationally within hours. Headlines. Photos. Speculation. The narrative fills itself in. Jake refuses interviews. He doesn't want to be a symbol. He doesn't want attention. He wants normal. General Hayes visits him privately. No press. No ceremony. He thanks Jake. Not as an officer. As a father. He offers a commendation. Formal recognition. The kind that looks good on paper and lives in a frame. Jake declines. I did it for my daughter, he says. So she knows her dad stands for something. That's enough for him. The general understands. The healing doesn't happen all at once. But it begins. And it matters. But Jake Mercer's story doesn't end with arrests and rescues. What he did next would help hundreds more. Months pass. The noise fades. The headlines move on. But Jake doesn't. He knows something now that he can't unlearn. He's seen what happens when experience goes unused, when skills meant for protection are left idle. He's also seen what happens when the wrong people fill that vacuum. So he builds something new. Jake starts a non-profit organization quietly, without press releases or grand announcements. Its mission is simple and deliberate. Help veterans and former bikers transition into legitimate protective service roles. Not as vigilantes. Not as enforcers. As professionals. Men and women who already understand discipline, loyalty, and restraint, but need direction, structure, and a reason to stay on the right side of the line. The program focuses on training that matters. Security fundamentals. Threat assessment. Investigation basics. Victim advocacy. How to protect without escalating. How to intervene without becoming the danger. Accountability is non-negotiable. Background checks. Counseling. Clear rules. Clear consequences. Jake makes that part explicit. This isn't about redemption stories for the sake of comfort. It's about putting capable people where they can do measurable good. The first class is small. 12 veterans. For former bikers. Different pasts. Shared understanding. They train hard. They argue. They learn. Some almost quit. All of them finish. Every graduate leaves with employment lined up. Private security firms. Nonprofit protection details. Investigative support roles. Real jobs with oversight and purpose. Captain Laura Hayes becomes part of the program early. She brings intelligence training, pattern recognition, how to read operations from the outside in, how trafficking networks evolve when pressured, how to spot the signs before people disappear. She doesn't romanticize the work. She doesn't soften it either. The impact comes faster than anyone expects. Within a year, program graduates assist in disrupting 3 additional trafficking rings. Not through dramatic raids, but through early detection, proper reporting, and coordinated intervention. People are rescued before they vanish. Families never have to hold candlelight vigils. Karen becomes part of it in her own way. She speaks at fundraisers, not as a mascot, not as a symbol, as someone who understands what bravery actually looks like. She talks about doing what's right even when you're afraid, about paying attention, about believing that actions matter. People listen. Jake watches from the back of the room every time. He doesn't correct her words. He doesn't guide her message. He lets her speak. Later, when he's asked how it all came together, Jake reflects simply. I wore the uniform, he says. I wore the patch. But my daughter taught me what heroism really means. There's no applause in that statement. Just truth. The work continues. Quietly. Relentlessly. And it lasts. The place looks the same. The parking lot hasn't changed. The lines are still faded in the same places. The doors still open and close with the same mechanical rhythm. People move through without knowing what once happened here, without any sense that this ground ever held anything more than routine. Jake notices anyway. Karen walks beside him, relaxed now, older in ways that don't show on the surface. She scans the space instinctively, not with fear, but awareness. A habit learned, not forced. She slows for a moment and looks across the lot. Daddy, she says, quietly, remember when we helped that lady here? Jake stops with her. He follows her gaze. He knows the exact spot she's looking at. He stood there 1,000 times in his mind. I remember, he says. I remember you helped me be brave enough to help her. Karen thinks about that. She tilts her head slightly, processing it the way she always does when something matters. Being brave means you weren't scared? She asks. Jake shakes his head. No, he says. Being a hero isn't about being fearless. It's about doing the right thing when you're terrified. Karen looks up at him. Like you did. Jake smiles. Not the guarded kind. The real one. Like we did, he says. Together. They stand there a moment longer, not saying anything else. They don't need to. The lesson has already taken root. Jake reaches for Karen's hand. She takes it without hesitation. They walk on. Somewhere behind them, life continues exactly as it always has. Cars pull in. People unload bags. Ordinary moments stack on top of each other, unaware of the extraordinary ones that came before. That's how it's supposed to be. As they move forward, the story widens beyond them. Human trafficking affects millions worldwide. It doesn't always look dramatic. It hides in routine, in parking lots, in places people stop paying attention. Awareness saves lives. Reporting saves lives. One person choosing to act can change everything. If this story moved you, don't just like and subscribe, share it. Because every share could reach someone who needs to hear that one person can make a difference. Comment, I stand against trafficking, and join this community of people who believe in protecting the innocent. And remember, heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear leather. Sometimes they're everyday people who answer the call to help.